the SM Media Podcast Network. Hi folks, and welcome to the latest episode of the SM Media Horse Racing Show. I'm Scott McPike. It is always a pleasure to be your host, and we've got a fantastic show lined up for you this week. It is always a pleasure, first of all, to be joined by my regular co-host Callum McCluckin from the Scottish Daily Mail.
Hi there, yeah, a very exciting time. Just at the back Grand National, and then we've got Ayr to enjoy at our local track.
Yep, and we thought we'd make it a special episode this week, and we finally managed to get somebody I've been trying to get on the show for years. I've been at best of him for a long time. But it is a delight to welcome Clerk of the Course of Ayr Racecourse, Graeme Anderson.
Thank you very much. Good to be here eventually.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I've always looked forward to having you on the show, and I know how busy this week is for you, so we're not going to keep you too long. But just a couple of things, obviously, in terms of this week. We are all based in Ayrshire. Me and Callum are based in Ayrshire. You're obviously at the racecourse now. It's looking fairly dry for the rest of the week. Like, what's the kind of process, and what's your kind of expectations for what lies ahead this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I think this time of the year has been fantastic. It's great to work in, as we all know. It's great to be outdoors when you get weather like this, but obviously it has its challenges as well. But no, looking fantastic. It's to be dry, I think, till about Monday or Tuesday, and then some showers. But I mean, for racing wise, for the crowd and everything else, you couldn't ask for better. It's what you want. Obviously, it has its challenges with watering. We've been watering now since last Tuesday, I think it was, about the 1st of April. Constantly just going round in circles, 24 hours a day. We have night shift on as well, so just try to get the ground to where we want it to be.
And like you mentioned, obviously, about the watering, and that's something kind of last week that was brought up as well. Like, it was a fairly good Grand National based on times and things like that. Like, are you expecting any sort of change from what it is just now? Like, now it's saying good to soft. Is that expected to be the same come Saturday?
I think inevitably it'll dry slightly. I mean, we're good to soft at the moment. The hurdle track maybe even soft in places a wee bit, but good to soft at the moment all over. It would inevitably dry while we're racing's on Friday. We can't do anything about that. You know, that's the same. So at the moment, we're expecting it to dry slightly, hopefully not too much. We will put some more water on Friday night again through the night, and hopefully we can kind of hold it. But I do think it may be good to soft good come Saturday, but we still like to be on the easier side of good, just for, you know, runners and, you know, welfare and everything else.
Callum, that's the thing as well. Obviously, looking outside, I don't see a cloud in the sky, and I don't see any rain forecast for the rest of the week. Like, it is going to look as if it's going to be a fairly decent Scottish Grand National, which is always good for us.
As Graeme says, it has been dry here for about the last 10 days. You know, it's been like a kind of mini summer, kind of wee heat wave. But yeah, I mean, the team do a really great job there, and they're getting rewards with, you know, some top class entries in the year in year out now. And funnily enough, you had all kind of different weather at the time, and at the start of the year it was a real challenge because there was so much rain at the start, and Ayr obviously took an extra meeting on in January to kind of, you know, when it was waterlogged at a lot of other places. So you can really deal with all extremes of weather, and I'm sure they'll be watering away right now.
And like Graeme, obviously Callum says something interesting about taking on the extra meeting this year. Has it been kind of as busy as you can remember in terms of kind of racing? And like, because I don't think Ayer's had any issues with like waterlogged or anything like that, from what I can hear.
Been very lucky this year, and the fact we took the extra meeting was great. I mean, we're happy to race when we can, but to have, I think it was 3 or 4 meetings January, you know, so quick together was probably a bit extreme, but it was great. We managed fine. It's just one of those years. Usually we can be waterlogged. We've been very lucky. I mean, I don't want to bore you with exact details, but at the moment, this time compared to last year, so 4 months into the year, compared to last year, we're almost kind of 5 inches behind in rain. So it's a significant difference, which obviously is telling. We're taking extra meetings in January and February going ahead as we plan. So, as well as obviously frost as well, we're very lucky with that. We never really had anything too severe, which is usually our kind of January, the second fixtures struggles with that, but we've been lucky this year.
And obviously as well, like in terms of the weekend, what it brings, like obviously a lot of people come to check it out. Just like last year, it's likely going to be a pivotal kind of race meeting in terms of where the Trainers' Championship goes. We saw last year the Mullins Battalion heading over. They managed to win the Scottish Grand National last year. And based on the week they had at Aintree, it looks as if they're sending a bandwagon over again.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic if you're any sort of racing fan or you're involved in racing in any way. I don't think you could ask for better. Last week was probably the best result we could have asked for. Dan Skelton's out there in front, and Willie Mullins obviously closing it now with some of his results last week, but it's very close. So everybody's got all to play for. But yeah, I mean, 40 entries for Willie Mullins for one day is unbelievable. And some quality in there. We've got the winner of last year's returning again, and things like that are still in at the moment. So we'll see what declarations bring. But we couldn't ask for better. I mean, I think sold out Saturday as it is, this just adds to the hype, it adds to the excitement. It's fantastic. It's great to be involved in. As much as the water's a headache, you've got to take the rough with the smooth, and we'd love a shower of rain, but listen, it's great to be involved in. I don't think any sort of racing fan would think any different. I think it's fantastic for air. Brings a lot of people to the town, which is needed, and a lot to the community and things like that as well, which is fantastic. So we couldn't be in a better place at the moment.
Well, all that is left for us to do, Graeme, is just wish you all the best for the week. Hopefully it goes as smooth as I hope you want it to, and we can't thank you enough for giving us your time this morning.
No worries at all, thank you.
So a massive thank you to Graeme Anderson, Premier Racecourse, on what is a busy week for the Scottish Grand National meeting. We will cover that later on when we do a bit of a preview of Ayr Racecourse and the big meeting, but we're going to obviously touch back on what happened last week. Aintree was as fascinating as we thought it would be, and it absolutely delivered, Callum. It's, as we mentioned with Graeme, the Trainers' Championship is firmly back on.
Yeah, and it's a good result for us up here, because it really kind of adds an extra layer of intrigue into the title championship, and just seeing like Willie Mullins and his quality coming over again for the second year in a row is going to be extremely exciting. And yeah, I mean, it was all platform was a Nick Rocket, and 1, 2, 3, 5 in the Grand National is quite something. A lot of them near the top of the weights. Like last year, it's sheer class prevails again, and it was extra emotional for him and very tearful at the end, because your son riding it, and the owner obviously dying of cancer a few years beforehand as well. It was the emotional story, and it's a case of the Grand National. Yeah, it's maybe losing its luster in some quarters, but it does deliver emotion like no other, and even more so in results like that. So yeah, it was an absolute fairy tale result for the whole Mullins family.
Just we'll touch on the Grand National first, obviously the race. Willie Mullins having the first 5 of the first 7. Nick Rocket obviously winning at 33-1. We did give it a mention. Then basically said like the reason we went back and it was because of the jockey. I thought he was maybe too high in the weights, but the way the Grand National was working now, if you have a class horse and they manage to get to 2 out, still cantering, they've got a very, very good chance. And we have been fairly... I don't think we've ever criticised Patrick Mullins as a horseman, like in terms of his knowledge of the game. I think, and I think you might agree with this, I think he's one of the best writers to read. I think he's fantastic. We've never been like fully on him as a jockey, but I think after this week, I think he's very much deserving a lot of credit for what he did, and particularly Gaelic Warrior, but he's riding that Rocket I thought was excellent, and he deserves the credit. And as you say, phenomenal story.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually tempted to back him in, because also wins the Bobby Joe and has a prep like that, it really shouldn't give him off 33-1.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's just kind of missed in the kind of 34 runner stuff, really, and things like that. And there was an overreaction to the jockey booking, who was excellent, by the way, in Gaelic Warrior as well.
Really, yeah.
When they won at Aintree. I don't think they're against him. You just think, he's a heavy amateur rider in top grade 1 context. So actually in a handicap context, I don't think it was that much of a concern. I mean, I would have backed Nick Rocket over Manila Kakuna quite comfortably. At the time, they were kind of Manila Kakuna was getting back while Nick Rocket was drifting. I couldn't really understand that differential. It's 34 horses, and you can't back them all. And and he was one that was definitely on the short list that was chalked off. I did think it was maybe too high in the weights, but as you've alluded to, it's all about class and stamina now, really. If you're in the foot of the weights, but yeah, you do have a ceiling your ability. I mean, you're not going to win. Aroko was undoubtedly well handicapped off 152. I mean, it feels incredible to see this in a 4.5 mile race. He get beat because he lacked a gear.
I think he will come on a bundle for it though. I think next
Yeah,
year.
he could, and he was an obvious eye catcher, and but he has to maintain his mark, and I think he would have liked to touch a soft ground because he was just finding the pace of that a little bit too hot, and like your archetypal stairs, Stumptowns and Vanillas of the world, they could not go the gallop first half.
They couldn't. And that again kind of shows the ground, and it shows how different the race is now. And again, like, it was something I was talking to somebody about the other day. Like, years ago, I remember Grand Nationals where, like, boats were winning it. Like, no disrespect, but it was like horses that would win an either, then go on. Like, I am Maximus, I think was obviously a class angle. I think Paul Townend, was trying to get the ride exactly the same as he did last year, and I just think he was potentially I don't know what. I think he made a bit of a mistake.
He didn't travel kindly through it as he did last year because I think he was probably going a little bit quicker than he wanted to, and he would have preferred softer ground. But again, just his absolute class has taken him there with a winning chance off a mark that really should be astronomical and too high. And maybe you've got to kind of look at it as kind of more of a kind of really limited graded handicap now, rather than, because you might think you're well in, but you need to be high 140s, low 150s to be kind of getting the weight that you want, and you're only still getting 15, 16 pound off them, which isn't enough when these horses could be like placing a Gold Cup quite easily. That are fighting out the finish. Grange Clare West, for instance, staying on third, really back class form. Second Irish Gold Cup this season. So yeah, I mean, this is the caliber of horse that you've got to get to now in the modern national, and I think it's the last two renewals been the evidence since they made the changes. It's looking very hard for a kind of your old fashioned, one pace stayer to really land a telling blow in this now.
Yep, and obviously it was a race that delivered a phenomenal story for the Mullins, and obviously the owners of Nick Rocket. It did come with its issues, as we've obviously seen yesterday. We'll start with obviously pretty bad fall with Broadway Boy. Again, like I think the two horses that obviously the big kind of health worries after the race were very different. Broadway Boy just took a horrible fall, and I'm just delighted that he seems to be over the worst, because it didn't look good when you saw the fall.
No, I think the camera angle helped when they kind of swooped into second Valentine's, and you could have that kind of bottom up kind of thing. The changes that they made since 2 years ago, and I think most of them have been very good, but I think the falls probably now look worse because they're happening at greater speed. Broadway Boy was pinging everything up front, really enjoying it, bang, 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 but he's still flying into these fences. And if you overpitch him, if you get it wrong, it looks really bad in first viewing because it's happening really quickly. It's firm ground, he's skidding across the turf for a long, long way. While the old steel fences would have been too big up, and you would just kind of crumple down and just reach the other side. There's no right or wrong way of falling. It still happens, but I think it was made to look worse than it is. And fortunately afterwards he was okay, and the treatment that they get instantly when something like that happens is improved, tenfold. And that's managed to save him, thankfully.
Yeah, obviously Celeb Delaine, obviously a bit different at the time. Like, you could see he was another one who just seemed to be having a lovely time of it, and then just 2 out, just completely tired out. And Michael Nolan's obviously been suspended for 10 days, but we obviously heard yesterday an official statement from the BHA that the horse hasn't survived. A lot of scrutiny coming for the jockey. Like, first of all, like in terms of the circumstances, like it is just tragic. It is really tough to analyse. What do you think of the reaction towards the jockey? Is it fair? Is it maybe harsh at this point? Is it one that is maybe just so unprecedented we don't really know how to assess it?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those that you'll probably have to wait to see the dust settling a little bit on him. I mean, he's obviously taken a hammering for it, and by probably ill-informed people mostly, and I think he's deleted his X account and things like that. So, I mean, you could whack him with any ban that you wanted to. He's still going to feel absolutely desolate for ages. It's something that he'll have to live with for a long, long time because, I mean, as a proud racing fan, and I do like the National Hunt game, that to me, that death was pretty avoidable.
Yeah, it was.
And I think, every jockey, when your winning chances go on and your ground's going and you're losing ground that rapidly, you need to know when to call it a day, particularly in that environment. And he didn't. He should have pulled them up sooner. And the stewards have reacted quickly within the room, giving him 10 days, obviously before they knew that the horse had passed away. But it was dangerous. It should have been in the 21, 28 day bracket ban. To be honest, what he did, you can't. The modern national, the scrutiny, the social license under growing pressure from wider society, and that's the race that's under the most pressure by a long, long way, and you need to be much more responsible than that. And the sport failed the horse on that occasion.
Yeah, as that I think
a
as
collective
well.
feeling as well, because I think if you look at that race, out of 34, I think the 4 that would automatically rule out, a 13-year-old that wouldn't stay at 125 to 1 would have been one of them.
And you can clearly see if you watch it back from, like, I remember like Ruby Walsh analysing it. I think it was the first time I noticed as well, like just how much he just completely flattened after the third last.
It's exhausting, and
it's so warm as well, and there's absolutely no wind.
And they're going faster from longer out, so I mean, because they'll jump the fences quicker, you've got to last at stamina, and it's just it's a pretty end-to-end gallop. Well, last year with the softer ground, they probably went a shade slower. That's why you had more bunched into the second last. But your lesser quality of horses just can't sustain that. And he was going really well. He was leading across the Melling Road, for instance. And you do. People get caught up in that moment as well. You're an outsider that think you've got no chance. I'm bucking away, winging away here, and I'm leading this thing. And if I can get home, then I get a chance. But once 5, 6, 7 horses are zooming past you, what are you doing?
Keep going. We saw it as well.
You're not racing, you're not winning. Why you can't? It's not like you can't just thrash a horse to try and hopefully get to the end of the race. It's not on anymore.
And we saw it in the weighing room as well. I think I don't know whether it was the steward or the start. I don't know who it was. They'd said, I think it was last year in the documentary series, they'd said if your horse is in any sign of discomfort, you have to pull up.
Absolutely.
So that's the warnings were there. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's the optics of it, and it looks terrible. And to be honest, it is terrible because you'll get all the numbers and he'll be added onto it. But I mean, I think that one was really avoidable.
Yeah, just a sad story, and what was obviously a big weekend for the sport. We'll start on Thursday. Obviously, a couple of races I wanted to analyse. It turned into pretty much the Willie Mullins Paul Townend show for the first 2 races, and Perry Pass winning at 9-4, and then a good pick for you, Murcia, a horse you've liked for a while, winning the juvenile. Basically, just Willie Mullins had dominated the first 2 races. When Perry Pass, I thought travelled really well, and Murcia, I'll let you go here because you've liked her for a while.
Yeah, I mean, and Perry Pass, freshened up for this, cheek pieces on, doesn't like Leopardstown, comes back here. He's the fresh horse in the race, and won quite snugly in the end. He was absolutely winging, set 2 out. I mean, he was really brave at the fences, and he loved it. And don't you think that the Ryanair would be a distinct possibility for him? And I think the way Willie Mullins trains, it's a strength and depth, and it shows even at Aintree where you think, well, why is he not going to Cheltenham with this horse? It could be a B team, but sometimes it's just the plan to fit them all in. And he trained I think he got his best horses going a little bit later this year than normal, and I think he's really reaping the rewards of it because they're a bit more fresher and they're not the kind of the quality of a winner, but the spread's bigger. He had 10 festival winners last year, didn't win actually the big 4 feature races at Cheltenham, but he still wins 10. They're still all in the frame, and he'd been front in the champion trainer race if State Man jumped the last, things like that. So it's the depth and his ability to kind of spread it out and keep various owners happy, and and keep targeting the right races. And they did that when Perry Passy and didn't miss, and Murcia again. Was the juvenile that I thought that was coming together and would come out of Cheltenham the best. The favourite was ridiculously short.
Yeah,
Back to the boot, put your hands together, who won that. 64. That was mapped out for that in good ground and bounced a little bit, travelled well into it. But Murcia reverting to positive tactics, Paul Townend back on board, and just a bit of better ground, spring. Good filly that's just bringing things all together, and yeah, there's no triumph form to speak of in there. So if you put the top 3, probably the top 4, the triumph, she probably wouldn't have been up to scratch. But again, it's another bloomer that you'll probably see put away till next Christmas, things like that, and then coming out again later on and maybe going for whether it's a graded prize, maybe whether it's a county hurdle like Kyrgyz, I don't know, but they'll already be mulling over a long-term plan with both of these horses. It was a cracking start to the meeting punting-wise. Django Bay again. I don't know what punters are doing saying that 64. I know it's class, but that race in the Arkle, like we saw with Ludo said earlier on, must have left a small mark because that was.
There's definitely talent there because the way he stays on
in the meet and he rallied again and the trip suited and. I think I put him down as a novice that might get found out next season in open company personally, but we'll see. He could come back, but yeah, he's certainly a harder unit. But I'm not sure he's top class.
We'll go into the obviously the formerly known as the Betway Bowl, the Brooklands Golden Miller Bowl, where Gaelic Warrior, who I don't think we gave any sort of mention to, and has been. If any horse is one of the most baffling horses to follow, but can put in a performance, is Gaelic Warrior. We have mentioned already, went off 11-4 for obviously the Richies. Obviously, they had a really sad loss with Willie DeHule the race before, so this was a big one for them. And again, at no point in the race up until maybe the second, you thought Gaelic Warrior was in here because Grey Dawning looked to be the winner from a long way out, but it was just the ride I thought was superb.
Yeah, well, it helps when the camera sometimes zooms out.
The camera work was atrocious.
You wouldn't have even known Gaelic Warrior was still in the race.
Yeah.
Coming to the second last, but he's there. And it was a very good wait and patient ride for Patrick Mullins. But again, they've given him extra couple of weeks. Again, it does it like Leopardstown. He's a rejuvenated character over here. That's the difference of. When Perry passed, I think there was kind of at least there was exuberance there, and you could see the long term plan. While this horse, he was racing at 4. He looked like he'd found his limit. He looked like he'd kind of had enough of it, to be honest. And he comes here and coax out a good performance of that. And not masterly. He was backed into 11-4, and he was the best horse in the race, all things being equal, but he wasn't showing enough. He's beaten Grey Dawning, who's probably done well to finish a 3-length second, given he clouted almost every fence. Just a bit clumsy.
Wasn't to be for a hoist and yaw. I thought this was the day that
I think he's kind of had enough. I think there's enough scar tissue that's built up in his bank to kind of draw stumps with him. I think he deserves a kind of probably an honourable retirement by now. Steve Starr ran well for a long way, didn't quite get home. You just think Gaelic Warrior. There's no point persisting with Leopardstown now. The King George must be a massive target this next season for him. It just looks a lovely race for him. Back right-handed, 3 miles. And he stayed on really well, and he does have style in his pedigree. He'll have to campaign him like a Gold Cup horse, but he's up to 170 now. I think that's the route that you've got to try and go. King George Gold Cup, something like that.
Yeah.
I think that might be the way to go with him. But It was hard to get confidence because I poked down like one look at him and went, I'm not, I'm not riding him. I rejected him. He was far too harem scaring, and Patrick comes on board and settles him at the back and produces him very nicely to win quite snugly. So it was very impressive training and riding performance, like it was in the National.
Well, let's go into the Aintree hurdle. You had a very good piece out in the Daily Mail about this, obviously, about this race. This race was just unbelievable, but in a strange way, believable.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you watch that, Constitution Hill?
Yeah, I know I've got to give the winner initial credit. I mean, she's come out, and she's toughed it out against Woodoo. I don't think it wasn't as visually impressive as the Mayor's hurdle, but Woodoo would probably be second.
Woodoo's a seriously progressive horse. Like
take no chances.
He's very good.
Take no chances as Phil the third spot again, like it was in Mayor's hurdle. So yeah, I mean Woodoo's ran really well coming back off the Martin Pike to do that. Backed up what she did on a mark. Mid 150s horse probably. Lost your mouth. Has got it done in the line. Looked strong at the finish as well. But she needed to get down and dirty to win it, and probably high 150s form, I would say. But yeah, I think I feel anyway the winner's left it on the floor again.
Constitution Hill, it's instantly after the race, obviously, like we had a conversation and we were very much in the camp of it was a poor ride. If you watch it back, I am going to say something here that you might disagree with. I just don't think he likes these new hurdles. I think it is. Like if you watch back the races before, because the first attempt at these new hurdles was Kempton, where he didn't really, he kind of jumped better. He wasn't really kind of flicking anything. But if you go back to the old hurdles, he was flicking everything and he was getting over. You aren't allowed that give anymore in these new hurdles. Now, they are safer. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I just found it very interesting. Straight away after the race, Nicky Henderson's first thoughts was, we'll still go to Punchestown because he'll handle the hurdles better. And that's all that's been in my mind is it actually the hurdles that's the issue here? Does he just not? You don't get the give. Like, for example, if Faugheen, who was a noticeably untidy hurdler, he would have probably come down at a few back in the day when he was flicking everything.
Yeah, I mean, well, Estebrack fell twice, but I mean, that's a bit like the manager blaming the pitch.
I know.
And it doesn't really wash with me. I mean, personally, I thought the jockey was to blame for this. I mean, tactically, that ride was abysmal. There was, and I think he panicked, and that got the horse as well. And
would he have won?
The horse isn't. There's a total breakdown in communication between horse and rider here.
Would he have won?
Absolutely. Again, he would have won the champion hurdle. I think he would have won there because if you think, people think he was beaten, he was just shaking up to go past. And I think he would have went whoosh again. I do think the engine's there. It must be there. If he's taken off that far off hurdles, then he must be well within himself. He must be brave. He must be bold, and he is. And I think the jockey's the antithesis of that. I think when he goes long, Nico de Boinville's constantly asking, no, put in an extra stride, whether rightly or wrongly doing that, but he's not a pauper at his hurdles. And the horse isn't listening to him. And vice versa. And I do think a kind of small sabbatical would suit and stick James Bowen on him or something at Punchestown. That might be one way of looking at it. The other way is to improve his concentration, maybe give him cheek pieces or blinkers. That might be another way of doing it. Or you can draw stumps and think it's not worth the risk and we'll have a flat campaign. I'd imagine they've already tried fences and schooling. That's not gone well. I would think you'd have to think that an 8-year-old like that has explored their options. But I mean, I think the jockey had him in a corner, and then when he pulls out off the inside, when there's not a rail there, that's when mistakes seem to creep in a little bit. When he jumps at pace, the pace lifting the champion hurdle, it caught him out. When the pace lifted again, only to the second last, it caught him out. It's when the pace is lifting and he can't really jump at pace anymore. I don't think the jockey's giving him any help whatsoever, and if he is, he's not listening to him. That's. I mean, Nicky Henderson's already come out and rightfully so that all these opinions are all kind of up in the wind and from people that aren't the horses. But I mean, they've staken the game and put their money down and they follow it. So I mean, they're going to say what they think. That's what I think. I think the jockey kind of panics when he goes long because that's now in his locker. I mean, after that last at the international hurdle, because he won, he's still standing up and saying, I'm sorry, that should have happened.
And he got away with that though because there was so much in hand.
What's the difference between that? I think it's so much in hand again, but what's the difference between that and an international hurdle and a grade 2?
Yeah.
On the bridle, saluting the crowd, so that shouldn't have happened. It has happened and it's crept into his game because it's happened to a worse degree at the champion hurdle. And then again, the Aintree hurdle where, I mean, his jumping before any of these mistakes was perfectly fine.
His jumping was sublime.
It's just all that aberration. And the factor is, I mean, I really don't see where it kind of goes at the moment in the current status quo. You go to Punchestown, they have different hurdles and be fine, and they can get it out of his system. But and Nicky Henderson in between says that he's schooled plenty of times, yeah, but not at championship hurdle pace. Mm-hmm. And it's when the pace increases that the mistakes happen. And that is the ultimate thing that they've got to somehow sort out. Now, personally, if I was the owner, I get a change of jockey. But it looks like, obviously, loyalty and belief, things like that, and will come into the equation. And he's partnered them before and they've got it right. So, I mean, maybe they can sort it out and they will stick with what they have. But I do think jockey is a slight issue.
I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and they've obviously got very different time frames. If he goes to Punchestown at the end, will he go to Punchestown? I'll ask you 3 questions. Will he go to Punchestown? And if he does, will he win?
Well, I think you'll probably get a decent price on him. But, he'll have State Man to contend with who would probably be harder to beat than maybe Lossiemouth over 2 miles now. There's a bank of evidence that's going like that. So very hard to judge. I think they'll probably go. I think he'll probably win. And if he jumps, I'll probably back him because I think he'll get odds against. And I do still think that if he puts it all together, I think he's still the best horse there. And you are you will gradually get better prices. You are taking a chance, in my opinion, that he's getting to get round. If he does, I think he would win because even tactically, you get boxed in by outsiders, and he's shuffled back. The jockey's not panicking at that point. He's only kind of panicking when he doesn't know what to do when he's going in a hurdle, and neither does the horse. And a lot of ex-jockeys obviously will queue up to kind of defend them, and rightfully so, it's their trade and things like that. But there's always the opposite line of when they do jump the last correctly. The rider makes up the horse's mind for him. That doesn't seem to apply here because, in my opinion, he's not listened to him. And yeah, I think Nicky Henderson thinks there might be some brain fog in the horse as well. So they need to kind of iron out that level of confusion. And I think they'll only go if they're really, really happy with him. And I think they probably will take their chance. I think they're inclined to do it. I think the trainer seems to be pretty keen on it. And yeah, you might get 2-1.94 about him beating State Man. And I think everyone will have their own price limits, and people just maybe won't back falls like that again. But I still think he's superior enough. If he jumps cleanly round, he would beat State Man around Punchestown as well. So, yeah, I mean, if you get the right price, and I would still side with him.
Yes or no? Final question before we move on. Will he win another champion hurdle?
No, because I think the New Lion might be the next champion hurdle kid in the block, and I think he'll progress by him because I don't see these issues in the long run really being ironed out. He has the ability to do so. He'd only be 9 next season. He could nick one, but he'd have to see these problems being ironed out. And champion hurdle. I think the New Lion's also a serious threat. So I think he'd win at Punchestown, but next year at Cheltenham, no, not at the moment.
Okay, I'm very much think he can win another champion hurdle, but again, you want to see
win one, but I don't think he will.
I hope we're sitting here in Constitution Hill
Golden
versus
Ace again.
Yeah, Constitution Hill versus the New Line in the fighting fifth. I think could be serious, if a serious clash, and I hope we get it because we've been denied so many clashes over the past few years. We'll stick with Nico de Boinville because we'll move into Friday because obviously you had put in social media as well something I very much agreed with. John Bond in the Melon Chase was a high pressure ride for him, and he got this one right.
Oh, he won it. He got the job done. It was gritty, but it wasn't pretty. But I mean, got to understand how much massive pressure he would have been under after the debacle of the day before to go in that and have another Grade 1 for a 4-runner heat. That looks like a penalty kick on paper, but as we've seen with recent results in the spring festivals, it could also easily go wrong. And a horse that you particularly need to be brave, you need to be aggressive with, and be in the same wavelength with. And he did it, and massive credit him because that was a real test of character, and he passed that with flying colours. So I mean, I think it's important that when you think you see something wrong, dish out, give him a bit of criticism. That criticism certainly doesn't need to extend into abuse, where it does in some quarters. But you give enormous credit to him for coming back and the following day immediately, and that's the beauty of the sport. You can go from zero to hero very, very quickly, and he got it right. I mean, it wasn't the prettiest thing in the world. There was an early pace battle. He sensibly sat off it at the right time, and then pressed on again at the right time. It was a penalty. I mean, El Fabiolo's got serious jumping issues. It's not really.
What a lash about him in
It's not really covered over. Protects that needed much softer ground at that trip and entering veteran stage. And Matata's not really proven it as a Grade 1 level, but he's still got to go there and do it, and yeah, they managed to do so. And like last year, when the Nicky Henderson team really needed a winner to get out the kind of gutter and sticky situation they were in, it's John Bond that's always the one that helps them out. And I'd imagine that, all well in, he'd had a hard race there, he'd been quite tired, but I imagine they'd go to Sandown and take their chance at the celebration chase again. Another venue that he seems to really, really like.
Yep, 13 wins from 16 races for John Bond, obviously the Grade 1 specialist, when apart from the Cheltenham Festival. But again, you can't knock his consistency. He's been tremendous. And again, it's a big thing for the horse as well to come back from that disappointment last time out. El Fabiolo, back over hurdles?
I don't know. I think you need to kind of just down in class, probably. I just think that was happening a little bit too much for him too soon again. I didn't think his run the last day in Ireland was too bad. It's like he got outstayed by one, but maybe these kind of middling Grade 2s is what he needs, because I worry for him because he's not quite been the same horse since his back injury.
He's never been a tidy jumper, even in his best days, but now he doesn't get over. That's the big difference.
Yeah, the reach, he lacks maybe a bit of scope, and maybe reverting back to hurdles is definitely an option. I think they probably will explore it, but he does look like a kind of 2.5 miler these days. A top 2.5 mile graded hurdles isn't quite there. I think he'd benefit from maybe going down in class a little bit. Problem is he's like rated 170, so I don't really see where he can get a kind of soft option confidence booster into him. That's when these kind of conditions races were there back in the day for, and they're kind of all been booted out now. So yeah, I mean he solves many problems as Willie Mullins, but I think getting him back would be quite the achievement.
Yeah, anybody can do it though. It's Willie Mullins. We'll just go a couple of the Grade 1s, obviously, on Friday. Caldwell Potter, again, another very good jumping performance. Salvatore Monday, obviously, looking back to putting in a very good performance in the top novices hurdle, and Julius de Picton winning the Sefton. Like, any of those three kind of big highlights for you?
I mean, Caldwell Potter's jumping is just absolutely terrific. I mean, like I said, it's falling apart. The Green Dancing City was hacking around behind them, and it was 6 out, way too out to tell what would have materialised. But he's clung on in the end from the other horse that's come from handicap ranks by a length and a bit. I wouldn't get overly carried away with him. But he's seen it out well. I thought he would contest a 2.5 mile race personally. They went here for the 3 mile one, and he saw it out reasonably well enough. He's probably more Ryanair than Gold Cup tight in his career down the line at the moment, but his jumping is just going to put anybody under a lot of pressure because it's so efficient from the front. So yeah, and it was a good week for Paul Nicholls because he's been on. I mean, this horse, for instance, has taken a lot of stick because of his price tag, things like that. But they've been patient with him. They've built him up, and they're now beginning to get the reward of it. And I think you could probably see a more aggressive campaign next year. I mean, he could be another kind of Kempton type. Who knows? Because he does have gears. So it'd be interesting where he plays because he might have been a touch flatter to win that Salvador Mundy turning over Romeo Coolio. Again, it's just Willie Mullins freshening up horses and just he sat off the kind of hot pace in it and it worked, and Paul Townend being on, and it was a bit of a coming of age performance from him. I think Romeo Coolio probably did enough on the front end as well. He made one big mistake, 4 out, that certainly wouldn't have helped him. And he's probably ran at a similar level than he did in the Supreme. Salvador Mundy's just improved. If you just go through all these Cheltenham races, there's just kind of place horses in between that Willie Mullins just seems to. He's in the upgrade. Okay, that horse has probably found its level. That horse needs a break, and I think when you're a top trainer like that, the team at Clerk are so good in figuring out which ones to give the right break to, which ones that are hardy that can go again, and which ones can just keep improving it of all recognition as well. And they slot them in really well. I mean, that was definitely a career best. Time was really good, and I mean, it'll be interesting to see what they do, whether they go fences with them or try the champion hurdle route. I mean, the Donnellys have quite a lot of these type of horses that are really exciting Grade 1 winning novices, and it's whether what they can do to kind of split them up. That was a kind of coming of age performance from him. So yeah, that was impressive, and the golfer placing was important in the in the Topham, which was pampered by a false start.
I'm going to get your thoughts on that on Saturday when we cover Saturday.
Yeah, the starter again, but yeah, he ran quite well at third, and it was an important place because that was the biggest each we may have had all season. So to hit the frame in a 30-runner race like that after being inconvenienced, I thought was a good effort. And again, even like the Grand National, gentle didn't be high class, second in a champion chase once, but you just think off that weight and a Topham up and trip, think it really shouldn't happen. But he just had that gear to just go and challenge a well-handicapped horse and win. And if these national trains are going into Topham trains, and it's quite something. Obviously trained by Willie Mullins again. And the Sefton was just a bad race, was it?
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot to come out of that, to be honest. I do think Mr. Mega is a good
horse. Probably didn't get home.
I think he was lame.
And they both probably went at each other too far out that made it attritional, get all these closers in. But if that translates to open Grade 1 form next season, I'd be amazed.
Saturday, the first 3 races, we'll get your thoughts on the starter. I was hoping we wouldn't have to mention it, but Saturday was a nonsense, the first 3 races. What was nonsense about it to me is that there were 3 different problems that caused false starts.
Yeah, I mean, the basic one is that they're coming too far back, I think. And ask them all in, and then in a big hustle bustle handicaps in particular, there isn't as much as importance as getting the restart right for fairness, as well as the start. So you've got some of them turning their back, some of them are obviously too slow, and some of them just aren't used to kind of breaking out a gallop from a standing start. It's the procedure certainly needs looked at. They promised that they would after Cheltenham, but I mean at Aintree you didn't really see much improvement from it.
I saw one, but I can't remember who said this, but somebody said an interesting thing which I have kind of wanted to get your thoughts on. Is the issue that the horses are going to the start too early?
Yeah, possibly, because then they've got to keep maybe turning them round in the post time, but there really shouldn't be an issue. And jockeys need to take some responsibility as well, and try and kind of don't come in too fast. But I think the thing that I think is really not spoken about enough is the new whip rules and the premium that's now put in modern racing to get an early position. Even in 3 mile, 4 mile races, being prominent, being handy is vital. If you're slow and you lack a gear, you need more rousting along, you need more whip assistance from the back. It's harder from the back than it is from the front. And if you can't go to the well that often with your horse anymore, then you need to have track position accordingly. If there's no pace in the race, and the way things are handicapped, look at Caldwell Potter, how he won. Look how Mayertown won. If you know that your horse is well handicapped, they're invariably in the front rank.
Mm-hmm.
And all these horses are coming to these big festivals and they'll feel they've got well handicapped and got a chance. And they're so keen, even more so now, I think, to get a prominent position. Particularly at the start, because then you think, well, if the pace is too hot, I'll just row in a little bit and ride the race accordingly. But I just think there is that element of desperation with the way the modern kind of national hunt racing is these days. It disadvantages slow horses that lack gears now. There's not much more assistance in the saddle allowed. The rules dictate that you really need to be handy and be prominent. So I think that's another kind of aspect of it as well.
We'll go just a quick, obviously, the grade ones on Saturday. Honesty Policy, obviously, winning for Gordon Elliott. Was a very much a hit the crossbar week for Elliott, like Cheltenham, where his horses were running well, they just weren't getting over the line. And Honesty Policy obviously did do that. Rob Coeur won another grade one in the Liverpool Hurdle with Hidden Valley Lake. And I thought a really coming of age performance from Caliph Belly in the McGill.
Yeah, I mean, this was good for Honesty Policy. He came from quite a long way back from a fairly slowly run race and did quite well to get up in Collar Regent Stroll, who again dictated from the front and maybe showed more of his true colours here again. Nichols waiting for Aintree patiently. We'll have a right go at a top prize when I know my horse is in top form, and he was. So he did really well to run him down. Cocktail the van, the big market drift, ran with credit in fourth. Just lacked experience and get outstayed.
Probably will improve for fences. One of those De Bromhead horses I think will maybe come on for a fence.
Yeah, it looks like a pretty rangy unit. There was another baffling gap. Miami Magic went on 5-2 favourite in that race.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, go figure. That was mad. Hidden Valley Lake, Rob Coeur Stranglehold Stairs Hurdles looks as strong as ever. It was one that kind of got away a little bit. Kitzbühel kind of blew things at the start, really. He was too keen. He was on his toes immediately. He didn't handle the occasion. There'll be other days for him, I would imagine. Strong Leader went close again, and course and distance form that he's got was pretty impressive. And Caliph Belly, I thought, was really good.
Yeah, I thought it was good.
Again, jumping just very cleanly, taking his time with them. And Paul Nicholls pretty bullish that he could make Champion Chase grade. Now, I'm not saying weighed in, but I mean 16-1 each way in a division where it's no Sergino's market leader, but I mean he's really had his problems recently, and you do have to wonder if he will see the kind of same horse again, if at all, to be honest. And 72 in that regard is pretty short, and if you're looking for an each way one to take him on left field, it's definitely him.
I'm quite happy to take a 5-4 after you see him, kind of thing. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm
absolutely,
quite with Sergino. Like, I'm not like 72.
A bit like the Constitution Hill quandary that he had at the start of the season. You'd have to kind of see him, and even then, sometimes it doesn't go right. But you jump really slickly. Louis Sud again, shade disappointing. But I mean, I've flagged this up before with him. I thought he was just an early blooming novice, really, and he's just been. He had this kind of back catalogue of. The handicapper knew what he was, really, and I think we know what he is here. He's just not quite top grade material. Don't be surprised if the skeletons kind of get him down and get him to his level and he wins maybe a limited grade 2 handicaps or something like that. So I mean, there's certainly definitely a future with him. And Green Splendor was a good winner of the closing bumper.
Brilliant.
The Patrick Mullins show on the Saturday. I mean, one disappointing run, but apart from that, it's formed pretty good, and took it out, with a minimal of fuss. That was pretty impressive. I think he's one to watch probably next next season over Norwich Subbles.
Yeah, no, I think he is as well. I think there's a few maybe horses that caught the eye in terms of Aintree. Like I thought Caliph de Bailey, I think is certainly one to keep an eye on for next season.
Live Conti on the Thursday ran a big race.
Yes, and he went out to 16-1.
Second, I think the ground would probably be a massive factor that, and you know what he achieved in form. It was quite a big leap, and maybe some horses underperform a little bit. But he travelled in it wonderfully. He'll be a nice novice chaser next year. I'd imagine they go fences with him because he looked a kind of big raw old school Triumph horse.
Yeah, I would say so. I think I just maybe a couple I was going to give a shout out to. I thought, as you say, I did think in the last race on the Friday, I do think Slugger will improve for better ground. I think he was travelling into it very, very well. I think he maybe just needs a bit of softer ground. Celtic Dino, the gambling that you could see it late on, just obviously maybe
he got hampered badly, didn't he, towards the end in that incident with the slipper in the bend.
Yeah, but again, definitely a few gambles that obviously it didn't come off. I do think in the Sefton, I don't think it'll be like a race we'll be talking about. I don't think it'll be like a Hoyts and Your Brave Man's Game race, but I do think Crest of Fortune ran quite well to finish third. I think he was the one out that field that I thought kind of came on pretty well, and I think he probably is the one I think can maybe kick on, maybe win a competitive handicap. I don't think he'll get much for that. He's still off kind of 130. I think just with that race, Mr. Megget, I think it was basically the Triumph Hurdle repeat. I think the reverse, I think John Joe thought if he'd beat Nico, that was him. And then he didn't see this thing coming.
Probably. And that's definitely what I think. I mean, all these horses will find the level to a certain degree. I think they'll probably handicaps. I mean, they'll kind of finish in the heat. Manila Rescue obviously finished really well. Probably wants it maybe a bit softer because he looked like pulling up at halfway. Crest of Fortune, consistent. I'd imagine it will be fences for him next year. I would think so. Mr. Megget, I mean, he must have been confident. He did not find much of pressure at all.
No.
So I'm not sure whether it was. And in breeding, his stamina really shouldn't really been much of an issue. Caliphate involved, I think, would be much more interesting back at 2.5. And I think Familiar Dreams as well of Elliot would probably be more interesting at 2.5 as well. So they'll all find different levels. I doubt it would be in Grade 1 company.
We'll move into what's happening this weekend. Obviously, the home meeting there, Scottish Grand National. We've obviously spoke to Graeme Anderson, but there is a very competitive card. Anything you like for Friday? Like, I know we don't have declarations as of yet, but anything that jumping out to you for Friday before we get into the big races on Saturday?
I mean, Outlaw Peter will probably go for that feature again, and he's been handicapped accordingly. You know, he's only £1 higher, I think. I imagine this has been the plan for a long, long time, and Paul Nicholls is executing these plans pretty well. In the whole, and his yard are in a little bit of form, so I think him in the 3:15 there, I think he's probably the main one. Dan Skellin has entered Ace of Spades and things. I would really be interested in where he goes. He might run the Saturday as well, so it's a little bit up in the air entry wise. I think wait till kind of declarations, but as a general rule of thumb, these big yards tend to kind of take it in turns to dominate. I suspect Paul Nicholls will have a pretty good Friday, given what he's entered, because he's double entered quite a lot of horses, and the ones that he'll go for probably be quite significant. So I think he'll have a good day on the Friday.
We'll go into Saturday. Obviously, we'll very much now looking like Willie Mullins is going to send a lot over. He's got 40 entries. He's sending over Tully Hill and Western Diego for the 110. I actually like one in this, and I don't know what price he'll go off, but I do think Harper's Brook for Dan Skelton could be quite interesting here off 137. I think he's certainly one to keep an eye on in this. I would finish third in the race at Chepstow, but consistent form over the season. Like he's been winning races, beaten by some good horses. I actually thought one of his best runs was fourth in that race at Windsor. He was beaten by a few good horses. Made some ground before 2 out, but just never really got going. That was softer ground. I'd probably say he's better on kind of decent ground. I think he's got a chance here.
Yeah, he needs to be delivered late and
Yes.
great. That's the kind of thing. So you'd be hoping for a each way price there on him. Tommy's also was quite going well in the Red Rum. We won
Yeah,
this last year. It was a soft unseat. He's off top weight. It's a bit harder, but I think he'd have a chance. But it's really difficult to bet in this weekend at the moment because we don't have final declarations, and there's so many multiple entries here that Dan Skelton and Willie Mullins have. I thought Astela Pass would probably be interested because they might be able to dictate, and he's off a low enough weight. They might go that way off 130. There's definitely a big race of them. Lucinda Russell's entered a couple as well. Yeah, difficult to judge. I mean, I thought Tony's Oscar was quite interesting if he takes up his chance, and he's none for worse for his unseat a week ago.
We've obviously as well the novices champion handicap chase worth 25 grand. Willie Mullins has got Lombron and Loughlin. Dan Skelton has Coco Mademoiselle. I think Olympic Man, I think will probably go Scottish National, but I'm kind of back him wherever he goes. Anything you like for that at this point?
I think Olympic Man's been drifting for the National, so I thought he might come here.
Okay.
The one to beat here is probably Masaccio because third in that warm handicap at Cheltenham Festival, and Cobble Port's come out frank that form by winning in Grade 1 company since, and I think a step up to 3 miles around track like Ayr on quick ground, I think is what he would like. 146, it's a mark that's certainly not entirely beyond. I mean, he's obviously been third in kind of decent graded races, particularly in the Grade 1, the novice behind the Jukebox Man. So he's probably the one to beat here. I thought this was maybe a race that could maybe take what Willie Mullins runs on a little bit. Jasmine de Gruy is the other one, the bottom of the weights, that is ridiculously progressive for Anthony Honeyball Yard, and he sneaks in at the bottom of the weights. Very interesting walk on question. Pulled up the last day, but again another highly progressive horse. Before then, racking up the wins as well. I thought there were two that were also quite interesting. So it was only a first impression, but I think that this might be a race where you can maybe take on the champion elect.
Scottish champion hurdle, potentially a big race here because Willie Mullins has Kyrgyz, obviously the county hurdle winner. Absurd has entered. I have seen he has also entered in the flat at the weekend, I think, at Newbury. Ethical Diamonds here as well. Bunting, obviously, here as well. Valgrand's in for Dan Skelton, so it could be a pivotal race. Kyrgyz, obviously, is 149. Probably Cabrel de Mathin at 139 is probably the one I would probably side with here.
Yeah, I think he's definitely the big danger to Kyrgyz. But I mean, you won the county hurdle so comfortably that 149, is that really beyond there? I think the owner will be keen to go, given he's a local.
I think Paul Townsend comes over.
He did last year. Yeah. What's in the line here? I think he would. Absolutely. And I think Ethical Diamond is off a workable mark as well. Dicer Enos is likely to go. I think Valgrand won it softer, so I'm a bit worried for the Skelton runner here. Joyous coming back from a disappointing Mills hurdle effort back in this company is probably interesting. I think Bunting wants it softer. I'd be surprised if he came over. The fact that he's 16 probably suggests that he won't. One flyer if Willie Mullins takes over Carafon. He's entered in this, bombed out in the Martin Pipe. He just found that trip far too much for him. I think coming back to 2 miles, he's certainly no kind of 33 to 1 shot. I think he's probably needed time to kind of go over his kind of early season exploits a little bit and to find his level. But I think there's probably a better horse at 133 in there of him. But like you, I mean, Carol de Matin's the one that's been freshened up at the top of the market. This has been the plan some time as well. They were waiting and they were mulling over kind of going to Cheltenham with them, decided against Aintree here and decided to come here. And usually when Paul Nicholls does that, he rarely misses. So I think he'll be acting in behalf of Dan Skelton here, hoping that he can do it and hold some prize money. I'd imagine Absurd won't run here. Kyrgyz probably will. I think Ethical Diamond might as well. But, it's again, when he's got a stranglehold here, he leaves it late to declarations, and you can't really have a bet on it yet.
No.
I think if Townsend's on Kyrgyz again, it's pretty ominous because she said that she's only been going since the second half of the season, and they looked a ton left after the county hurdle.
Yeah, I did really like one in the next race, the Mare's Handicap Hurdle, but I've just seen that she's been declared for Newton Abbott tomorrow. It was Music de Fee for Georgina Nichols. Very, very good last time out at Sedgefield, over 3 miles 3. Only been risen £7 for that off 109, but very much likely she's not going to go here. I can see Nurse Susan in here for Stan Skelton. Like willing to forgive him? Willing to think so?
She needs it softer, I think. Yeah, they took her out because Aintree was quick, and this is just going to be as quick. So I don't really see an extra week, I suppose, to get over it. But I mean, she ran fine in the Martin Pipe. She just get tired from a long absence, 2 out. So I could forgive her. I mean, I had pennies on at 40, so I can obviously forgive her. But I mean, 8-1 here and off a bigger weight, I'm not so sure. I thought the Henderson at Aston Martin would be interesting. Win the last day, it's come with a high profile, but it's just getting back together and beginning to improve a little bit. Lucinda Russell won this last year with an outsider. And Lady in the Park at 40s is ridiculous. Problem is that they might race out the handicap a little bit, but she does have some good back class form. Yeah, this is going to be tougher. But I think 40-1 is a bit disrespectful. Golden Point's a horse that did quite well mid-season and is probably better than 107 as well. So whatever they decide to run certainly deserves a second look. But at the top of the market, Aston Martini was the one that was the most interesting.
Let's go into the Scottish Grand National. Obviously, Willie Mullins won it last year with McDermott, who has entered here at 16-1. Can you understand why Chosen Witness is 9-2 for this?
Yeah, I mean, I've given him a positive mention before he was a non-runner on a regional national on the basis of his a few weeks ago, based on this kind of he unseated, but he was bang there in a kind of warm race last time. He's related to 4-mile winners. He's progressive, he's completely unexposed. Could be anything, and I think he's an attractive profile for it. He's the one that's been backed as if Paul Tennant's going to be on him.
Mm-hmm. I like 2 for this. I do think the one that the Mullins yard is jumping out to me is High Class Hero. I think, pun intended, I think he's done some class performances this season and defeat. It's taken him a while to get off the mark over fences. I thought he was actually pretty good as a novice hurdler. If you remember, I put him up for the Albert Bartlett, where the above mentioned Patrick Mullins did give him a poor ride, but he ran on very well to be second at Punchestown. So I think he does like better ground. He's been okay over fences. Obviously got off the mark at Punchestown. It just depends who rides him, I would imagine, because I'd imagine he'll go for this.
Yeah, I thought that they might not go, but I thought he might be their kind of Sandown horse because it off a mark of 148.
Yeah, could be.
And I thought, would they run him off top weight if Miss Carroll doesn't run? It's going up to 4 miles instantly. What he really wants, particularly when they've got others in there that might be better handicapped. I don't know. I mean, it's impossible to tell, to be honest, because none of them are kind of coming for massive support, and none of them are really drifting. The only 3 that seem certain to run are Chosen Witness, McDermott, and Spanish Harlem. And that's no surprise because they've been here before. With High Class Hero, Key de Bourbon was in this as well, and did go. He went to Aintree. He was entered. I just wonder if off 148 they really come here. But if he does, he'd obviously have a massive chance. And again, whoever rides him, maybe Danny Mullins will. I don't know, but yeah, he's certainly get back class, as you've said, and he's an obvious one for the shortlist.
The one I actually really like at an each way price, and I'm keen to see your thoughts here, is Wise Guy for Nicky Henderson. I just think he was outpaced in the Kinmure. I think if you watch it back, he maybe just gets done for a bit of toe, but he stays on really well to finish 7th. Does like this ground. Won very well at Newbury on decent ground back in November in the Peter O'Sullivan. I think there's a big race in him, and I think he will appreciate this step up and trip. And I think this could be the each way play of the race for me.
Yeah, he was one of the outsiders that was drawn to as well. There's been a couple of good mentions for him around. 129 is definitely a mark that's not beyond him. He's a bit quirky as well, so I think going out the amateur ranks back into professional handling, I think would be would be a plus for him. And he's won already this season, so you know it's in the locker with him. This is a bigger ask, but it's eminently doable, and on a handicap perspective, he would have a chance. He's one of many here that do have a decent enough profile for this.
Yeah, obviously we will have the column going out on Saturday for the action, and Callum will have his picks as well. Obviously, we will be on top of the Grand National meeting in Scotland Friday, Saturday. Callum, any kind of best bets, any horses to follow this week? We will obviously be back next week to do the Fairy House Easter Festival. It's all happening in April, but anything you like for here or anywhere else before we finish?
I mean, with Willie Mullins bringing over 40 and you don't know what's running, what's not, then I think you just have to kind of wait, I'm afraid, for declarations and final plans and not really commit to anything. So no, I mean, I've looked at this. I mean, 1 hour avoid Whistle Stop Tour probably won't run because of the ground. So that's quite prominent in the Scottish national market. So I would kind of keep that in mind. But, all these kind of Mullins types are all kind of concertinating towards the top of the market. A lot of them aren't formed yet, and you really need to know what's going where to really kind of dive in with anything with real confidence. Probably Outlaw Peter in the Hill House Quarry, and the Friday is probably the one that's significantly keeping the eye, because I just like the Nichols angle of coming back for this last year. Directly Sandroot in the Red Rum already. Just working back from a long way back to get him back handicap well enough for this kind of familiar spring target. And I think it's shaping up to be a pretty similar race than it was last year. So yeah, it's kind of pretty horses for courses. Trainer form, I've seen Skelton kind of plunder like 4 or 5 winners a day. Paul Nicholls 4 or 5 winners a day sometimes at these meetings. So once one trainer gets up and running quite quickly, then it's, and Willie Mullins obviously last year, which is no surprise, but they can reel off a quick kind of 3 or 4, and they can kind of dominate the 2 days. But yeah, it's very exciting. We've got Newbury in the flat as well to contend with. So yeah, it's kind of that nice kind of between season where there's a little bit of something for everyone.
Yeah, and Sunday we'll see the return of the Sky Bet series. There will be a column going up for the action at Musselburgh, and we'll also have a column Tuesday, Wednesday for the action at Newmarket. Craven's on Wednesday, and there's also Cheltenham on Wednesday as well. So it's all happening between now and
Guinea's trial season as well. There's a couple in Ireland over the weekend. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot happening. It's difficult to kind of still be fully invested in one and monitoring the other. But we've had Doncaster the last couple of weeks. It wasn't long ago Lincoln, so the toe is tentatively been dipped in the flat as well. So, but it's just about kind of getting your eye in at the moment.
Yeah, thank you very much as always, Callum. We'll see you next week.
Yep, no worries. Catch you later.
Thanks very much. We'll see you all soon.